Welcome to the Town Board of the Town of Ossining regular meeting and special presentation for Tuesday, February 26th, 2019. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic and one nation, God, visible, justice for all.
Councilmember Dettori.
Present.
Councilmember Shaw.
Present.
Councilmember Feldman.
Present.
Councilmember Wilshire.
Present.
And Supervisor Levenberg.
I am. Hey, so go ahead.
First item on the agenda is the public hearings.
Yes, we're beginning tonight with 3 public hearings, all surrounding a similar issue. I'm going to take the motion now to go into the public hearing and then discuss?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why don't you?
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for a motion to open each, the public hearing for each of local laws 2, 3, and 4. And then we're going to discuss what those are about and hold the public hearings concurrently. I know many of you are here to hear about the plans for McCarthy Drive, but we have public hearings to talk about first. So we will do that. And if I could have a motion to open the public hearing. Oh, go ahead. Do you want to read?
Sure.
Okay. Local law number 2.
Local law number 2, 2019, abolishing the office of the elective town superintendent of highways and creating the office of appointed town superintendent of highways subject to a mandatory referendum. Local law number 3.
Oh, wait.
Oh,
Okay.
we're
Can
gonna
I have a
vote
motion?
individually.
So move. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Local law number 3.
Local law number 3, 2019, abolishing the office of elective town receiver of taxes and recreating the office of appointed town receiver of taxes subject to mandatory referendum.
Do I have a motion?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Local law number 4 of 2019, abolishing the office of elective town clerk and creating the office of appointed town clerk subject to a mandatory referendum.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so as I mentioned, we're considering these 3 individual referenda that would be put to, these 3 local laws that would be put to public referendum. We're shooting for June 2019 to eliminate the offices of several elected, shift from elected offices to appointed offices for the office of Town Highway Superintendent, Town Clerk, and Receiver of Taxes. We received a grant from the Department of State through the Municipal Restructuring Fund to learn about Ossining community's appetite for finding efficiencies through departmental consolidation, a grant that was originally submitted with the Village of Ossining. And what we agreed would be a viable place to start with the village was to look at how Ossining residents would feel about 2 proposals. One, to convert the position of elected town highway superintendent to an appointed position, and the other to convert the clerk and receiver positions to appointed ones and potentially into one combined title and shared office. Based on the pending retirements of 2 of the 3 elected officials who currently hold these seats, we saw this time as an opportunity, as you might with any business, to reflect on our delivery of services and how, if at all, we could improve them. We embarked on an information campaign with our consultant, who distilled the ideas into a website for the public to view and take a survey on their impressions of the scenarios we provided. Every town parcel was mailed a postcard directing them to the site and asking everyone to participate in the survey. We received 177 responses, many of which were supportive of the concepts and theory and asking us to expound on them. We then held 2 community conversations at the Ossining Public Library to hear from our residents with their thoughts and answer any questions. Assuming that through this public hearing process, the board determines that there is in fact this appetite from the community to bring these referenda to a vote, the next step is to have these local laws actually open to the public hearing to continue to get feedback, and that's where we are tonight. As I mentioned, we are opening all 3 of these joint at the same time so we can hold them concurrently because we want the record for each of them to reflect the collective conversations around the topic. As with all public hearings, these local laws are still an open issue. We will continue to take public input for the next several weeks, and no decisions have been made. There are, of course, pros and cons to both sides of the issue, and we are here to listen. If anyone is watching from home or on YouTube and would like to submit comments as part of the public hearing record, please email them to the board at tc@townofaustining.com. And with that, I think we had there was a sign-in sheet passed around for people who wanted to speak about these 3 local laws. And Anne Marie Rocco is going to call those. And if there are people who have come in after and who want to sign up to speak, please approach and you can sign in after we call the first few people. Okay?
Sure. Andre Lamar.
And we would just ask everybody to limit their comments to 3 minutes so that we can get through all of the public comments. And then if there's need to go around again, we can consider doing that.
My name is Andre Lamar. I live at 12 Haymont Terrace. And what I am interested in knowing is, since this is going to be a new system directed by the board, what are the qualifications of you as a board and individual board members to be questioning the qualifications of the people that are going to be selected for a new position? That's my first question. My second question is, what happens to the records that you people would be able to keep on the individual that would be selected? Because it doesn't say that there is going to be a contract or anything like that, and good records would have to be kept. My third question is, would the person who is going to be selected for any one of the 3 positions going to be a resident of our community, larger community, the village as well as the town? I would appreciate an answer on those 3 questions. Thank you.
Consulting counsel.
Well, this is actually a public hearing, so this is an opportunity for the board to hear from the public. The board isn't really going to be in a position to respond to every single comment raised, but as part of the public hearing process, it does give the board the opportunity to hear what the public has to say and to respond where it deems it appropriate. I will just say that there are record-keeping rules in place for municipalities that have to be followed. They're promulgated by the state in regulations. And so that would govern record keeping with respect to any municipal official or department. And it is delineated by different departments. So we could make those regulations available to the public on the website if that would be helpful. In terms of the residency, those are things that the town board can certainly consider in deciding if and who they want to appoint to that position when it comes to that time.
Did you want to comment about civil service? Mm-hmm.
Hi, good evening. So in our prior conversations, what we had discussed as far as the highway superintendent position is that once that position is no longer elected as per Westchester County civil service law, it becomes exactly the same named position, but just appointed. So now there are qualifications and a civil service list, which basically means folks can go to Westchester County, say, I would like to sit for this exam. They have to have certain qualifications in order to sit for the exam. And then in order to be reachable on that list, they have to have scored high enough. So basically, we do this for many other positions in the town that are considered competitive titles. So if we're looking to hire, for example, an intermediate clerk, we call Westchester County, we say we're looking to do this, they send us a list, and we have to canvass that list, which means we have to send a letter to each person on the list and say, we're looking for someone in this job title. Here are the parameters. Here's the salary. Here are the hours that we expect. They can send us a letter in return saying, yes, I'm interested, or no, I'm not. And then based on the people who are interested in the job, the town board would have to choose from those people who have fit the qualifications, done sufficiently well on the test to be reachable, and then go from there. So the town does have the choice to take either the Westchester County list or a local list if one exists. So only Ossining residents.
So again, we usually public hearings, we if we have ready answers, again, that we think can illuminate everything, we will respond, but we try to, again, take your comments, and then we can follow up with a work session when we can have a discussion about those, and also continue to push out information to the public with responses to the questions. So based on any additional questions that we receive, we'll decide how we want to proceed with answering the questions. Okay, next up.
Mindy Lamar.
Hi, Mindy Lamar, 12 Haymont Terrace. Thank you for answering that. That was actually my first question about civil service. Why those three positions? Why not school board? Let's appoint school board members. Just because somebody has a school-age child doesn't mean they have the background or qualifications to run a school district. If we look at the superintendent of highway, the current superintendent, Mr. O'Connor, Mr. Curtin before him, if we look at Ms. Perlowitz, the receiver of taxes currently, and Gloria Freed before her, Marianne Roberts, obviously the town clerk Marie Fusey before her. They were long tenured elected officials who, in my opinion, did a great job. Were they qualified? Yeah, I think they were. What do I know about receiving taxes? What do I know about highways? I just know that I had no complaints with any of them. Perhaps most importantly to me is what happens down the road with future administrations. If we make these three appointed positions, if we make these three positions appointed, what if future administrations decide, well, you know, we don't want diversity. We want to hire our family, our friends. Why would this board want to be criticized now for seemingly resorting to cronyism, at least in the town clerk and the receiver of taxes position, which my understanding is they're not civil service? Is that correct? Okay. Why not let the residents decide in the voting booth? Isn't that the basis of our democracy? Why take that away from us?
Is there something that you want to respond to the one? I think a lot of those were comments, I think,
Well,
versus questions, and I don't think we're going to
Well, you
directly
wanted
respond
comments.
to some of those.
Right, you wanted
Yes,
wanted
I did.
comments.
Yes,
Right,
but
the
there is one.
question
There is one piece that we were going to respond to. So.
So there is the situation that I just described about the superintendent of highways. No such competitive titles apply for the other two titles. For the town clerk, the threshold is, I believe, high school diploma or GED and 18 years old. For the receiver of taxes, it's a bit higher. I think they ask for a bachelor's degree in accounting and some years of supervisory experience, I don't remember off the top of my head, or a master's degree in accounting.
But it's not civil service.
Well, so civil service is sort of a complicated term. It's not competitive, which means for the clerk and for the receiver, because they're not competitive, they would be appointed by the town board and employed at the will of the board. The highway superintendent would be a different story. And that's based on our research to this point, based on keeping those same three titles, just flipping the switch from elected to appointed.
Okay, thank you.
Art Sullivan.
Art Sullivan, 3 Hammond Terrace. If it's a cost-saving measure, why are we holding a referendum which, in June, which we know will cost money?
Do you want to?
That a direct, is there any other, do you have anything else to say
Well, a
otherwise?
couple of other things, but that's my first one.
Okay, so just have all your, state, all
Okay, sorry.
your comments.
At one point, this board was talking, and the village was talking about merging the highway superintendent with the village highway superintendent. Is this the first move of that? Okay, those are the two.
So just to address the issue of a referendum, in accordance with the law, the first step in this process is that the town board would have to pass a local law, pretty much setting forth the abolishing of the elected positions and creating the appointed positions. However, under municipal home rule law, it requires that the abolition of any elective position be sent to referendum. It's mandatory. It has to be done no matter what, because with the theory being the electors, the people in the community, have to vote in favor of this because you are the ones that currently elect those people. So it's not something that the town board is doing as a cost. It's something that's required by the law in order to be able
It
to
can't
have
be
it.
done with the November election?
So
They're doing it with the primary in
the
June.
primary.
Right. That
we're
was
trying
the
to
intention.
piggyback on the primary in June so that we don't incur costs.
There's only, the Democrats are the only ones that are running in the primary.
But because there would be a primary, we anticipate that there will be somebody up for election in a primary. There will be every district will have a setup for a vote.
Thank
So
you.
that will then save us money because we won't have
We're
to set up.
required to do it
We're
anyway.
required to do it anyway, so we would be piggybacking on an already existing election.
Seems to make much more sense to do it in November when we know everybody will be voting.
Because we're looking to take advantage of these retirements that would be happening this year, instead of having new people then be elected into office starting in January, we were trying to get the referendum in June so that somebody wouldn't have to go through the process of running and then find out that the position has been removed.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I have.
Okay. If there's somebody else here to comment, public hearing.
Hi, I'm Kim Jeffrey, and I have grave concerns about this possibility of removing our ability to elect officials. I find any time that elected people are trying to take away the right of people to elect other people, it's concerning. It raises flags for me. I think you just before this, you just had a conversation about the fact that you might put this on for June, which would be the primary for Democrats if there was a primary. So then Republicans don't generally would not think to, even if it's open for everybody, would not think to vote because they wouldn't recognize. So you're disenfranchising voters right off the bat by doing it at that time. That would be my first statement. I will say that the fact of the matter is there have been conversations going on. They're very small. Most people don't know that this is happening yet. But as it goes on, there are some people who say things like, what does it really matter? They're not policymakers. These aren't policymakers. But the fact of the matter is that I believe that the independence of these positions is important. they do decide or push to decide or fight to decide the amount of people that are in their offices. They have the knowledge with respect to what it is that they need at different parts of the seasons. And it doesn't always go well. I think there are people who believe that because this town is run by Democrats, that everybody gets along at all times. If we look at some previous administrations, we will see that that is not true. We have had a receiver of taxes and a highway superintendent who are very much pushed. And in fact, their salaries were slashed in order for certain things to happen, which I was deeply against at the time. So that is just proof that things don't always go the way everybody thinks it does. So the ability to elect people is important. Somebody else made a point that everybody who has had some of these positions, at least in the receiver of taxes, which even though it is promulgated by statute, the job itself, the fact of the matter is that independence is a leverage. And if you are the boss of that person, then that can cause some conflict issues. I think the other problem is that I don't see any real savings for this. Even if you are going to consolidate a office, which I can't understand why that's a great idea, to have one person who's in charge of the clerk's office and the receiver of taxes office with deputies basically doing the work. Okay. You're going to end up paying somebody who's supervising that more money than it's not going to end up being cost savings. And if you're going to appoint civil service, you're really not going to save. And I hear my time is up. So I don't think you should do this.
Hello, my name is John Van Steen. My primary question on this is that from what I understand, the salaries that we've been able to pay the elected officials in these three positions over the last number of years have been substantially less than what other communities neighboring us have paid for their civil service personnel. So I really don't see a gain to this as far as the finances of the town are concerned. We have gotten quality people in the past. I would think that that would continue. Thank you.
Anybody else here to address the board?
So I don't think I don't want to put words in the board's mouth, but I don't think there was any intention of closing the public
Absolutely
hearing tonight.
Nope.
Leave it open.
Yes.
Give some time to digest what was said tonight, more opportunity for written and oral public comments in the future. So I would recommend that the board, as you did with opening the public hearings, make 3 separate motions to adjourn each of the public hearings to the next legislative session of the town board, which is
Okay. So
March
can I have a motion to adjourn the public hearing for local law number 2 till March 12th?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I have a motion to adjourn the public hearing for local law number 3 to March 12th.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Might I have a motion to adjourn the public hearing for local law number 4 to March 12th? All those in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Okay. So, let's see where we're up to.
Next item on the agenda are announcements.
I'm sorry?
Announcements?
Yes, we are up to announcements. So we are working our way into tax exemption season, and you may have heard some news about changes to some tax exemptions. Our assessor's office is always happy to help, and they ask that I share the following message. As always, they can also be reached at 914-762-8274 if you have any questions. The New York State Department of Taxation and Finance reminded property owners age 65 and over who are applying or reapplying to receive the Enhanced Star exemption in 2019 that they must now enroll in the Income Verification Program, IVP. Those already enrolled in the IVP don't need to take any action to continue receiving their enhanced STAR exemption. New IVP enrollees will likewise automatically receive the exemption each year they're eligible. In the first year of enrollment, the assessor will verify eligibility based on the income verification provided by the homeowner. In subsequent years, the New York State Department will automatically verify eligibility. As a result, homeowners will no longer need to renew the exemption or share income tax returns with their local assessor's office. This change applies only to seniors 65 or older applying for the enhanced STAR exemption or those who have the exemption included in their property tax bills. This does not affect those who receive a check for this exemption because New York State Tax Department already verifies income eligibility. If you already received the enhanced STAR exemption but aren't yet enrolled in the IVP, you must renew your application for the enhanced STAR exemption and enroll in the IVP. The forms were already mailed to you. Please submit as soon as possible, but prior to May 1st, 2019. Newspapers did report March 1st, but for Ossining, it is May 1st. If you're also receiving the senior citizens exemption, you'll still need to annually renew that benefit with your assessor. The renewal application will be mailed to you the first week of February, which means it should have already happened. In the past, the seniors who qualified for the senior citizens exemption were automatically granted the enhanced STAR exemption. Beginning in 2019, you must apply separately for both exemptions. The deadline for all exemptions, veterans, senior, disability, county firefighter, clergy, nonprofit organizations, etc., applications and renewal is May 1st, 2019. Please call the assessor's office if you have any questions. Again, the number is 914-762-8274. A few weeks ago, we shared with you that the village's toilet replacement program would now be available to town residents. The Village of Ossining has invited the town to take part in a water-saving initiative that could help you buy a high-efficiency toilet with a $200 voucher. To see if your property is eligible, go to villageofossining.org, find the Departments tab, and click on Public Works to find more information on the TRP program. I think there's also a link on the supervisor's update. No, not necessarily. Okay, we're not sure. That's the easiest place to get it. As a reminder, the deadline to apply to be part of this summer's concert series at the waterfront is next Friday, March 1st. That's this Friday. Please fill out the form on the town's website to get in the running for next summer's lineup, or this summer's lineup. We have an exciting weekend coming up in Ossining as we say hello to March and hopefully some spring temperatures. On Saturday, March 2nd, Todd Londigan, TL5, will perform at Westchester Collaborative Theater as part of their 2019 Jazz Master Series. Do not want to miss Londigan on vocals and on trombone during a night of Dixieland tunes to warm you right up. Tickets are $20 per person. Doors open at 7 p.m. for a 7:30 show. Visit wctheater.org to learn more. Sunday, March 3rd will be a packed day here in town. Start off at Sing Sing Kill Brewery for a vegan brunch hosted by our friends at Good Choice Kitchen between 11 and 2 in celebration of our Wayne Reynolds exhibition, Crossing the Line, Art You Can Touch. While you chow down, check out and interact with our Wayne Reynolds artwork and order up a pint or two. I think I might be missing a page. Let me just double check. Nope. Briarcliff Manor Historical Society will host a talk as part of the Revolutionary Westchester 250 lecture series at the Briarcliff Manor Public Library from 2 to 3:30. Adventures in the Neutral Ground will delve into the critical role that Westchester County played through the entire 8 years of the Revolutionary War, as well as introduce you to many players that helped put our area on the map. Pre-registration strongly suggested. Call 941-7072 to RSVP. That same afternoon, the Maryknoll Sisters invite you to join them for Music for the World, featuring the Hudson Valley Symphonic Wind Ensemble. Beginning at 3 p.m., come to 10 Pines Ridge Road in Ossining and enjoy a beautiful afternoon of music benefiting the Sisters' global outreach mission on behalf of the world's poor. Tickets are $30 a head and $40 at the door. Last year's concert sold out, so don't wait. Visit maryknollsisters.org/concert19 to save your seat. Also, on February 27th, there is a program at Joseph Caputo Community Center from 11 to 12:15 to learn about riding Beeline buses and how easy it is, especially geared to seniors who must be at least 65 years of age, and bring proof of age, such as a Medicare card and a valid photo ID, to apply for a reduced fare Metro card. That's that. And then we also have coming up in early March the St. Patty's Day luncheon for seniors on the 14th and the magic show on the 15th, both at 12 noon. So if you are a senior or know somebody who is one that would like to participate, that's free to our Austin residents, I think, or is it $2? Who are seniors. Please be aware that town and village offices will be closed to the public next Thursday, March 7th for Records Retention Day. Although we will be closed to the public on that day, staff will be hard at work cleaning out files to archive records that need to be kept in perpetuity or for a few more years, and disposing of records that have met their legal retention deadline. Holding records retention days on a regular basis is an important part of maintaining a healthy records retention program in local government. Please be sure to plan ahead for this closure. And if you have some records retention taking place at home, now is the time to get ready, because the Westchester County Mobile Shredder will be coming on Saturday, April 27th, to the Ossining Community Center at 95 Broadway from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. You can visit the Westchester County events page at events.westchestergov.com and select the April 27th event for more information about what is and isn't accepted by the Mobile Shredder. Also on Thursday, March 7th, the Ossining Documentary and Discussion Series will be screening She's Beautiful When She's Angry, a film that chronicles the outspoken leaders behind the women's movement from 1966 to 1971. Many of the issues sound eerily familiar in today's political climate, and the film goes on to address some of the challenges women still face today, including sexual violence and reproductive rights. The screening begins at 6:30 p.m. in the Boudars Theater at the Austin Public Library and will be followed by an expert panel for discussion after the film. All are welcome. Finally, on Saturday, March 9th, Green Austin's Repair Cafe makes its return to Joseph Caputo Community Center at 95 Broadway between 11 and 3. Bring your tired treasures to the experts and watch them breathe new life into textiles, ceramics, toys, costume jewelry, and so much more. Just no gas-powered appliances. Please come down and check out how you can reuse instead of replace. And with that, we go into liaison reports. Are there any liaison reports this evening?
Departmental reports.
We have Peter Connolly here this evening, our superintendent of Dale Cemetery, to talk to us, give us a little departmental update.
Good evening.
Hello.
Some of the improvements and the projects we're working on for 2019. First off would be the superintendent's cottage. I don't live there, but that's what it's called. That's also the cemetery office and restrooms. So basically, it's 95% exterior repairs. The front porch has to be taken down with that roof, the stucco, windows, painting outside the trim. So we met last month with the architects in Dobbs Ferry, and hopefully next month they're going to put together a bid specification. So hopefully, we could get going on that this summer. We will also be continuing our monument repair program. All of these are down in the older section of the cemetery, the lettered sections of the cemetery. They're the marble headstones, tablets. And because of their age or the material that they used at the time and occasional acts of vandalism, some are broken. So we hire this restoration company, and they come in and spend a week or two in trying to catch us up on that. We have a retaining wall that's separating sections 2 and 3, and that's going to be repaired this year. And last fall, if you notice, there are probably 800 to 1,000 veteran markers and fire department markers by the graves. And they have a tendency to turn and twist and bend over. So we started a little project last fall. We marked them and bring them to the garage, and we actually set them in a concrete foundation. So hopefully, and we put them back within 2 days. So hopefully, it's going to give a more uniform appearance once the veterans and the fire departments set their flags this spring. And on the equipment side, we're going to be replacing our 1997 Ford dump truck with a new F550 dump truck with a plow, so we'll be able to keep up with the snowy events at the cemetery. Yeah,
All right.
1997. Yes, you're right.
Okay, no.
Yes.
Thank you. Did you want to just mention I know Austin Historic Cemeteries Conservancy is having an annual or biannual
They're having a meet and greet
meet and greet
March 7th at the Elks at 7 o'clock.
March 7th
yes.
at the Elks at 7. And this is the group that does a lot of our headstone cleaning with volunteer elbow grease, I think,
That's correct.
over the months when it isn't 20 degrees outside.
Right.
And that will be coming up shortly,
They
hopefully.
start in April. Yeah,
They
April
do-
through October.
They start in April, so I think it's a little bit of a fundraiser, maybe March 7th, and it's at the Elks
Yes.
on Groton Ave.
Mhm.
Are there any other are there any questions for Mr. Connolly based on his report or anything else that you have for the department? Okay, thank you very
Right.
much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a special presentation, McCarthy Drive Restoration Update, Dolph Rothfeld Engineering.
And if we could have Paul Frioli, Andy Teese, are you coming up, both of you? And then we have James Natarelli from AI Engineering, which is the new name for the engineering company formerly known as Dolph Rothfeld. Paul, hello, our town engineer. Might you want to give us a little introduction and start us off?
Sure. Thank you, Supervisor. Town
We're just
Board.
going to get the PowerPoint or the presentation
Well, I could
boards.
make some introduction remarks while she's doing that.
Okay,
because it's
fantastic.
I'm not going to really speak to a drawing to start it. Just to give a recap for those that might be hearing about the project for the first time, and then to kind of bring everybody up to speed from when we were last in front of you all.
But just before you continue, can everybody in the audience hear Mr. Fraioli? Could you speak up or get a little closer to the microphone?
Okay,
Thank you.
I will do both.
Thank you.
We're going to try to reference the screen, which I think we can pan to the audience. And we also have some boards here, so we'll do our best to make a production for when people want to view this on tape, either this evening live or on your YouTube channel. We can go over those at that time. Okay, so while that's loading up, I'll start again with the introduction to the project. We were in front of the town board some months ago with Dolph Engineering at the time. So again, to reiterate what the supervisor said, Dolph Engineering has now been, I don't know the exact business details, but they are now AI engineers, but it's the same project, people working on it. More specifically, the workhorse behind that is Mr. Natarelli, who's with us this evening. We had some concept plans laid out and made a lot of field visits to see what existed in the field with the highway superintendent, myself, and his staff to do a lot of locating of existing utilities. There's been some interaction with utility companies. I'm not going to steal any of James's thunder because he's going to get into the nitty-gritty details of the design and what he's done since the last time he was in front of you. But the main scope of this project was there's a few main details of this project that we'll state here now. The road itself is in dire need of restoration. Basically, the houses along the McCarthy corridor were not done as best as we can do a records review via the formal planning board process, where they came in and they reviewed the entire subdivision of 30 plus or minus lots back there, and how all the utilities in those houses would be built as a subdivision full site plan. They basically were built house by house by house and subdivided along the way. The logistics of that, a lot of us weren't around for that, so I don't really know too many of the details, but I can say that what we were charged with from the supervisor's office was looking at it with the idea that we want to try to incorporate the things that would have been in a subdivision review and incorporate those components into the road now, to best retroactively create the appropriate utilities for stormwater, potable water, and then the other utilities that they get that aren't from the town, i.e. the cable TV and Con Ed, thank you, electric. So that's what we've done. Because the village has, because the village water department runs the town's water as well, we have Andrew Teese, the village's water superintendent, over here with us this evening to talk a little about the water main replacement. that is part and parcel with that project. It's important to point out that via IMA, the village is actually funding that portion of the project, and we'll go over a little bit of that when James talks about the breakdown of the estimated budget right now. And the overall, depending on what comes out at this evening's meeting, the overall budget and the potential schedule will be discussed. I'll come back to the mic again at the end to discuss that. So, well, no, you have the pointer. Oh, stay right here.
You can actually see from
Did that,
there. So.
you're
Yeah,
fine? Okay, as long as you can see. Move around so you can see what you need to see.
Pointer.
I don't know, Jack.
There, that's it.
That's
for
it.
me.
Want me to turn some of the lights out too, or is that gonna?
No, it doesn't.
That's up to Tom.
Okay, then I'll go to it.
I don't know if it will help.
Well, they put the details up.
Okay, that's good. That's, well, I might have a nap.
I will say this for the audience. We have a lot of McCarthy residents here
And neighbors.
and neighbors. I work in the village. Andy works in the village. James is virtually available anytime. If any questions come up after this meeting, certainly present them to the supervisor's office, and we will come out and meet you. We will discuss over the phone any concerns that you have. We've done that already with some of the residents or folks that have concerns on McCarthy, and we're always willing to do that. And rest assured, we're not going to end up completing something out there.
Well,
No,
we need to see it too. That's why
Okay.
it was adjusted.
sorry, Maddie.
Back that we live.
A little tiny
More?
bit back. No, the other direction. Other direction. A little bit more.
Or to them.
A little bit more. Okay, good. Thank you.
Just like home. Okay. So I wanted to start off by just doing a quick overview from some of the initial surveys that were accomplished to create the base mapping for the construction documents, by just giving folks an idea of some of the collateral issues that we have. You know, it would be easy if we just had to. That's about as. No.
There's, you know what, there are boards, there are physical boards that everybody can look at after. Why don't you take a listen? And then if you have questions or need to see if you need to see the pictures up closer, there's physical boards that you can look at after the meeting.
Or anytime, but I will tell you that tonight's evening, I'm not really, nor is James or Andy, going to discuss anything that you're specifically going to have to. This is really just reference points over here. There's not going to be a lot of details presented where you're going to have to weigh in or make decisions this evening on what's happening to your individual parcels. They're really up here just for talking points.
Okay, so how about let's listen to the presentation,
No, no.
and as part of the presentation, we've also asked for a description of the timeline.
Been nice. We would have known about this. McCarthy Drive, right down to Stormy Town, or Cognito, Cedar Lane, let alone White Birch Drive. Would have been nice if you.
Okay, so when we go through the presentation, we expect those type of questions, but to reiterate the supervisor's comments just now, let us go through the presentation. If questions are not answered or not answered to your satisfaction, we're certainly going to have Q&A after this. And again, we'll jump ahead a little bit to the schedule. We're not even at the construction document phase yet. So that's what meetings like this are all about. So,
And can I just ask if you can't see, you're just standing in front of other people. So either could you sit there or move to another seat where you can.
So we really wanted to put up these 4 initial surveys just to show you where the yellow highlights are individual lots of the roughly 2,000-foot corridor of McCarthy from Stormy Town down to the end where it becomes basically an item 4 and gravel road where it interfaces with the woods over there on the other side of Incognito. And if you flip through these 4 plan views, you see all of the highlighted areas are where the aprons interface with what is McCarthy right now. But what I really wanted to point out here is the right-of-way or your property limits before they come into the right-of-way, which is now the town's right-of-way. There's a lot of there's going to be a lot of coordination issues with things that were constructed there by the homeowners to interface with the existing limits of McCarthy. There's not really a defined curb there. We're going to put concrete curb there. So we're going to have to do a lot of coordination with people's driveways. And some people have entry statements, Belgian block. So we did our very best when we went out there with the superintendent and the design engineers to say, what's really the minimum width that we can, or what's the maximum width and the minimum width when we look at the utilities that need to go into the ground. We have to do a full water main replacement. That's going to require some excavation. And because we're doing it now as a subdivision that's going to get reviewed by the health department, there's going to be separation requirements, which again, I'm not going to go into too much of Andy's presentation, but there's separation requirements with the water main from people's sanitary sewer and the stormwater that we're going to put in. There's no stormwater systems in this road right now. If this, again, I'm going to state what I said in the beginning. If this was to come back as a project starting with a blank canvas, the stormwater component alone, which we're incorporating now, would have made this road a lot wider than it is now. So we're kind of retrofitting it into something while at the same time charged by the supervisor's office with having the limit the disturbance that you have with the existing lots. We're not looking to really create a whole new experience with your front yards with the road. We want to do what we need to do with the utilities and the stormwater and try to have you maintain as much of your existing front yard as it is today. But in some instances, which once we get into the final design, we're going to interface with individual owners. We're going to have to do what we need to do to install the utilities. There might be some large tree removal, which is, you'll see some of them indicated over here that are would end up in where the road's going to go. There's some, again, some entry statements with Belgian block, and then there's some column details. So we're going to work with the individual homeowners to either do restoration, relocation, or something in between. But the 30 plus or minus homeowners, we're going to look to satisfy every request to the extent that we can. The end result is going to be a concrete curb with a newly constructed road, because right now you really have years and years and years of just blacktop over an inappropriate subbase. Without getting into too much of the details of the design, it does come down to the end, which is right around where your 2,000 foot station is if you start out at Stormy Town. There's some work we need to do over here to interface with Incognito, but once we come into Incognito, the disturbance is going to be strictly the transmission of the storm line down to the intersection with White Birch. I'm going to bring James up now with the introduction of what he was asked to do, which was basically replace the water main and then create and install a storm system as he would if we were looking at this as a new project in front of a planning board. The request was to design for a 100-year storm when at all possible, which is more or less what folks do when they come into a planning board for a site plan submission. But in some cases, we had to make some adjustments to the stormwater design on the Stormy Town end because of the receiving body and the grades of the road where it interfaces with Stormy Town. So we worked as a 25-year storm there. But that is not really the concern as much as what a lot of folks, which we already started discussing there when the woman referenced the flooding at the end of Incognito where it's not paved. But I think you're going to be happy with the solution that we're going to present here with respect to that, because it basically avoids that entire flooding issue for Incognito.
Good evening. My name is James Zanarelli. I work for Dolph Rothfeld Engineering, Dolph Rothfeld Engineering Division of AI Engineers now. I'm a civil engineer and project manager. I've been working with Mr. Fraioli and Mr. Tice on this roadway rehabilitation project for McCarthy Drive. Mr. Fraioli has given you an overview of the project. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the details of the roadway reconstruction, the section of the roadway, and then a little bit about the drainage improvements that we're proposing. So what you see here is a cutaway or a section of the roadway that we're proposing. I've also added the existing section of the roadway with this dashed line. The roadway as it is now is at grade, and what that means is that the edges of the pavement are at the same elevation as the front yards of all the properties along McCarthy Drive. We're proposing, as Mr. Fraley noted, concrete curbs for the full length of the roadway with a 6-inch reveal. What that means is that for 6 inches, you'll have an exposed face of the curb, which is very typical. I mean, you see it right out here in Spring Street. In order to accommodate that 6-inch curb, we need to lower the roadway. When we lower the roadway, we're going to rebuild it from the bottom up. We'll start with a sub-base course. It'll be a granular material with some dirt mixed in. That'll provide a good structural base for the road. It's also very good for drainage. On top of that, we'll do a base course of asphalt with rough aggregate. On top of that, a binder course, which is a little bit finer aggregate. On top of that is your smooth wearing course. That's your top course. In all iterations of the design that we're looking at, we're going to have the top course. We're going to have that bottom base course. In between, we're still finalizing that we could combine those 2 layers. We're not quite sure yet. That's still to be determined. We're going to provide a crown in the road, which is typical for all roadways, to assist with the drainage, to make sure that it doesn't accumulate in the middle of the road, that it's pushed off to the edges and along the curb line. And that leads me into the drainage design. We'll talk a little bit about the existing drainage tendencies of the roadway, and then we'll talk about the proposed. The way it is now, the roadway comes across kind of a ridge. It's kind of on a ridge on McCarthy Drive. Right in the middle, or about halfway down, there's a high point, and that kind of divides which way the drainage is going, whether it's going to the south towards Stormytown or to the north to the end of McCarthy. I'll begin with the south. The drainage will flow overland. It flows overland now. It flows out towards Stormytown Road. It continues overland down Stormytown Road before it hits a couple of catch basins that are just uphill from the Cedar Lane intersection. In the proposed scenario, what we're proposing is to do a series of catch basins along that southern half of the road. We'll collect all the stormwater, intercept it so that it can't flow overland. It'll be piped down to Stormytown Road. From there, it'll continue piped all the way down to those same 2 catch basins that I mentioned before. The northern half of the road, the existing drainage tendencies are for the runoff to follow the path of the road to the end. When it gets to the end of McCarthy Drive, it looks like it's following a drainage path to a low point behind the homes on Incognito and behind the homes on White Birch Drive. From that low point, it goes to some culverts that are underneath Incognito Lane before it comes out the other side. What we're proposing is to still bring water to that downstream location, but in a slightly different way, and with an improvement. So what we're proposing is similar to the south half of the road. We'll be doing a series of catch basins where we'll intercept the stormwater, pipe it down to the end of McCarthy Drive. So it will no longer be above grade or flowing over land. It'll be in a pipe. Once it gets to the end of McCarthy Drive, there is an existing town easement between the end of McCarthy Drive and the cul-de-sac on Incognito Lane. And what we're proposing is a detention system between the end of McCarthy Drive and the end of Incognito Lane. And I'll get back to kind of the specifics on that, but from there, it'll continue, the stormwater, the piping will continue down Incognito Lane before we tie in to those culverts that I mentioned earlier on the downstream side of those culverts. So again, the stormwater will still be going to the same place, but it's going to take a different route to get there to come out at the end of the culverts. Back to the detention system. Now the idea behind detention, or stormwater detention, is to slow down stormwater. And the idea here is this detention system in particular is a series of large pipes. They're all interconnected, and it's meant to provide volume for stormwater to accumulate and to be detained. At the downstream side of that detention system is a control structure. And what that does is, like a typical manhole, it would look like a typical manhole from the surface. When you open it up, there would be a wall in the bottom of it. The top of that wall acts as a weir, and that's the control of the system. That's the overflow. Within the wall itself, there are a series of orifices that control the flow. And with those, we design those orifices specifically to match flows of design storms. So with that, we'll be able to detain increased runoff from the roadway in the system, in the detention system, and meter it out over a long period of time. With a storm, what typically happens is you'll get a peak. As stormwater falls, it comes together, it concentrates, and there's a peak flow. What this is meant to do is to spread that peak out so it becomes smaller. The volume may stay the same, but it gets stretched out over a long period of time. And in that way, it doesn't inundate downstream infrastructure. That's kind of the basic kind of top-level view of what we're proposing here. And we believe that this proposal will be effective in mitigating the effects of stormwater runoff from McCarthy Drive. And that's it for the stormwater.
Can you just elaborate a little bit more on the interface with Incognito, why we jumped over Incognito to get to White Birch because of the capacity to maintain your 100-year storm design, and maybe explain in layman's terms the 100-year design parameter?
So the 100-year storm is a storm that's based on a certain depth of rainfall. And what we've done is we've based our design on that 100-year storm. So in this case, it's over 9 inches of rain in 24 hours. So this system, and we're still finalizing the exact design, but it's meant to detain that 100-year storm. To Mr. Fraioli's point about why we chose this path, I'm going to go back a few slides. If the existing path of the runoff is down McCarthy Drive and to this kind of low point behind the homes on White Birch and Incognito, there's a better way to divert the runoff so that it doesn't go there anymore. That it's kind of jumping that leg of its run to come out at the downstream side of the culvert that presently takes the runoff from that area. So in that way, we'll be taking the runoff from McCarthy Drive away from those rear yards.
I just wanted that reiterated because one of the main things we went over with the highway superintendent when we were going back and forth to the site was his concern for the folks on White Birch that were getting inundated by the natural swale that is behind some of the houses on McCarthy. I don't know if I could really show it on here, but it's basically the you can stay on that one, or the other one. All right. So towards the end of McCarthy's, right around these last 5 or 6 homes over here, you can see it on the topo, but this swale that's behind some of the homes, and also behind the homes on the northwestern portion of Knollwood, runs behind and then down, runs behind those homes and into the cul-de-sac on Knollwood and through another easement for this parcel here on Knollwood into that same receiving stream that we referenced. So the superintendent was concerned that if you're going to divert, because we did consider diverting water into there when we were first just throwing design ideas around, and he was worried that that was going to come through here and that eventually makes its way out behind the homes on White Birch over here, and he didn't want that to happen because those people get flooded during heavy rain events. So now we took all of the storm water that falls on McCarthy, and for all practical intents, anything that falls on what we're going to touch will no longer make its way into the yards, which it does now because it just follows its grade. So it's going to go down to the end of McCarthy, into the detention system, which I think James is going to go to next, that exists in the wooded area of the easement over there, and through Incognito and down to an area that is into a receiving stream, a receiving structure that can hold a 100-year storm. There's some finish work that needs to be done where this eventually comes out on Cedar Lane. There might have to be some design improvements down there where it discharges so we don't inundate the people down there. But it's definitely not the concern that we have over here. And what James will go over now is this detention system that we have now in between the existing easement at the end of the Incognito cul-de-sac and the gravel surface of McCarthy at the end, which I know has been a very sensitive subject for the folks that live here. And I believe you were all copied on a lot of their correspondence that they sent us. That was all reviewed by our design engineers. Well, the folks on Incognito and towards the end over here definitely they did their research. But it's all well received, and they made a lot of good points, and that helps when we try to figure out what's going on. But that's why I wanted them to reiterate the design parameters on the storm. We don't have the 100-year design on Stormy Town, but again, we don't have any design there now. So anything we touch for stormwater over here is going to be better by default. But now, for the majority of this project, we've made it about as best as we can make a retrofit, as we would have asked a developer if he was to do this the appropriate way through the planning board process when this project first commenced.
Give you a little bit more information about the detention system. Here it is again on the plan. It's connected to the drainage system, proposed drainage system in McCarthy Drive, a piped connection to this detention system. Again, a series of 48-inch pipes, all interconnected. When there's no rain, these are dry. There's nothing in them. And when during the 100-year storm, they will begin to fill up. So this is just to give you a better idea of it. These are the 4 pipes together, just a section of what they would look like. And the idea, again, is that they fill up and that they meter out the flow. So the control structure only will let out a certain amount of flow during rain events, and the water will slowly build up in the storage capacity of the detention system, and meet those flows or spread out the discharge over a longer period of time. So again, not to inundate downstream infrastructure, or to not to inundate, and also to allow the discharge at a time when the existing infrastructure is peaking. So these will discharge and push water down to a time when the peak has already passed the points that we're talking about here. That downstream swale. I'm sorry. The downstream culvert that's here. That's yeah.
I think that's about as much as we could say about stormwater right now. We do have some individual homeowners that we need to visit with, and we'll be in touch with you as we go through the design process, because we are working around not just the utilities that are in the road now, but we're working around the folks that do come out with sanitary sewer laterals. There's a few of you that we're going to have a utility conflict with what we're looking to put in the road versus what you have right now going into, I believe, the 8-inch sanitary line that's in there now. So we want to work around that, obviously. And we're also going to be in touch with you all who have, again, some of the landscaping details that we're going to have to work around. And we're going to be very, very aware and sympathetic to what you have there now. I mean, we're all homeowners, and we know you. Please do not expect us to come in and just have our way with the road and leave you with the remnants. Everybody's going to be satisfied with the end result. That's our goal. But again, we do have to build what we need to build to design this road properly. I'd like to bring Andy up a little bit now to talk about the villages component in this project. Again, for those who have lived there for at least a few years, I'm sure you've experienced at least 4 or 5 water main breaks. It's an older cast iron line in that road right now, and Andy's going to talk to you a little bit about the village and what our role is here and how we're going to address that, because we don't want to build a brand new road and have water main breaks.
I guess you said it all. It would be short-sighted for us not to change out this water main, since it's going to be like a brand new build. It's reverse engineering. We've had water breaks through the years. It's an 8-inch cast iron water main, and it's going to be changed to an 8-inch ductile water main. There's about 25 services on that feed off of this water main. New shutoff valves will be installed, and new taps will be installed from the main to the shutoff valve by the village employees. So it'll be for quality control. Will be involved in every aspect of this water main. It has to be approved by the health department, and that takes a little time. So we're going to get this into the health department as soon as possible on the water side. What else was I going to say? The water main itself is going to give you better water quality. It's going to give more fire flow. There'll be valves installed for better isolation. Hydrants will be installed throughout the entire main, and we will take special consideration because we have had some calls in the past about flooding situations. We want to coordinate with the design engineer on the hydrant side to make sure where the hydrant drains that there's a stormwater basin by that hydrant. That's all I can think of. Yeah, we were talking about trying to use the existing trench on the water side where we can. So we don't know if we're going to hit rock. We don't think we're going to hit rock, but throughout the village and other town jobs, when we change out water mains, a lot of times we'll put bypass piping above ground, and then we will isolate the water main that's existing in the ground and install a new water main so you could use that part of the trench. Where we might run into some issues is the 10 state standards, which has changed, which is a health department regulation, requires us to have a 10-foot separation between water and sanitary or water and stormwater. So we might have to divert the main a few feet. There's special considerations where the health department will say, well, you really don't have any place you can put it. We'll make you put a different compaction of a different material that can't allow water to seep through. So it's going to be as we go, but it's it.
So the Reader's Digest summary is we're hoping to leave all the residents on McCarthy is a retrofit of what a developer would have provided you should he have went through a formal town planning board process with regard to a subdivision as far as stormwater, potable water, and sanitary sewage. And on that, it's okay with the supervisor, I'd like to open up some questions and see where that goes from there.
So if we could just take any questions from the board first, and then, yeah, flip the lights back on. Unless we need to see that diagram again, or we want to bring out the drawings. If people want to come up and look and point, that might be easier. Are there any questions or comments from the board before we?
Yeah, whatever happened with Con Ed talking about gas?
I believe that the highway superintendent circulated a survey to everybody on McCarthy and did not get enough responses, positive responses, and Con Ed was not interested based on the numbers that they'd received. Plus, as many of you know, Con Ed now has a moratorium in place starting March 15th for any applications that have not been received up until then.
One thing we didn't talk about, and I was remiss, we didn't really talk too much about the schedule, but as we go along with this project, if that moratorium gets lifted and for some reason that conversation wants to get resurrected, the intent right now is to have these designs get to construction document phase in the next few months and bid it out for possible construction commencement this summer and do everything we just described here. It's pretty significant. We're touching on $2 million worth of work here, but we still have to put the final design on. We think right now, based on the schedule and what we want to do in the field, that we're going to get all the utility work done, the concrete curbs done, all the interface work done with the individual lots, and the binder course. But think it might be not only a prudent design decision, but also a scheduling issue, and maybe leave off the top course till next year. Benefit is we'll have binder course with all the appropriate ramps around the casting so everybody can pull nicely into their yards and what have you and not hit any tire damaging issues in the road. But we'll also have a road that it's very wet, but we're reconstructing it, and it will be beneficial to allow it to go through a full freeze thaw season. So the road has a true time settling component. And this way, when we put the top course on, that top course will be fortified by a real appropriate binder course underneath it. So with that in mind, if this does resurrect itself, the gas conversation, it would be in advance of the top course, which is a good thing.
I don't know if it's a question or what it is, but did I hear you say you had to lower the road to accommodate a curb?
Yeah, it's more than just accommodating the curb. The road right now in some instances is higher than the yards next to it. So, you know, it rains and basically it sheet flows into the parcels next to it. That is not really best design practices. You know, you want to follow your stormwater design measures that you do now, again, in the subdivision approval process, or when the superintendent goes out and works on a road now. You don't want sheet flow making its way onto private parcels. You want to collect it on the road, get it underground as fast as you can, and then where you need to, detain it before you put it into the receiving stream. It's really better for water quality too. The faster it gets underground into the stormwater system, the less exposure it has to any of some of the contaminants that you find on the road, whether it's salt, petroleum, you know, product, or just general silt, or any contaminants that can get conveyed into the receiving stream. The faster it gets under the road, the better. It's really better stormwater practices, which is highly scrutinized right now by the DEC, you know, everybody's community. So this is a good thing environmentally.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Excuse me, everyone. We're just taking questions from the board, and then I'll open it up to public. And then you're going to have to come up to the microphone. Okay? Okay. Are there any other questions or comments from my board colleagues before we open it up to the public? Okay. I don't know if you.
Question. So the part that goes from Anna McCarthy to Incognito will remain gravel. It won't be paved straight through.
From the end of the newly paved portion at the end where it's gravel now into Incognito. There's going to be a lot of subsurface work. We're still putting the details on exactly what we're going to end up putting as restoration. We don't want to replant trees there because it's going to be a detention system that's going to require maintenance. So there's going to have to be the ability for the highway superintendent and his crew to get in there and do necessary maintenance work. But it's not intended to be a paved surface. There might be some subsurface geotech type components that we put in there to take the truck load so you don't do any settling damage to what we end up putting underground for stormwater infrastructure. But the aesthetic, we're cognizant of the aesthetic over there. We know it's people's, what was woods. We want to maintain the greenery as much as we can. But there will be some clearing that takes place to facilitate the line when it goes in.
Okay, but there will not be.
Yeah, and there's an easement there now with a water main there. So, you know.
No, I get that the structure, the retention stuff is there. You won't be allowing cars driving through there.
Correct. I don't know if we're actually.
It'll remain a dead end.
It'll not be a thoroughfare.
Okay, thank you. That's what I'm checking. Okay.
Correct.
Do you anticipate a lot of maintenance by highway department?
Not really. You know, this is a more grandiose scale than what I'm going to give you to compare it to now. But if any of you saw what it was actually a village project, no, it was a town project. Yeah, on Cedar Lane that we did, where the discharge went onto the village parcel, where I wish I knew the house numbers, but if you basically come to Stormy Town and you make a right to go north on Cedar Lane, when we had the road dug up there some time ago, I'm going to guesstimate 5 years ago, we did a similar system. It's basically a serpentine system of underground piping that detained that stormwater that used to inundate those two owners, so those two village homeowners, and then eventually the condominiums at the bottom of the hill. When we had the 100-year storm, those condominiums used to wash out constantly. Not to mention the people who were right on Cedar Lane, their slope was failing. That doesn't happen anymore. Everything was reestablished. We created drainage into the gutters with curbs and put a crest on the road to keep all the storm water underground as fast as you can. And right, it comes out in a metered flow. When I say, I don't mean there's a mechanical meter there, but basically when we use the term metered, we're saying it goes out at a controlled rate because we control the diameter of discharge piping. Because it's certainly not the same diameter as the serpentine system under the ground. This way you don't inundate whatever the receiving stream is. In this case, we put underground pipe all the way out to the woods, and there's a bunch of boulders at the bottom there. So it comes out and just makes its natural way into the water course, which is at the bottom of the hill by the condos. But we're doing that times 10 on McCarthy. And, you know, you go to engineering and you talk school, and the first thing you learn about paving, if you go to any seminar about paving, they say the 3 main rules is drainage, drainage, and drainage. And that's how you maintain an appropriate road. The road, as we're proposing to construct it, is going to be so much more of a pleasurable experience for you guys and your visitors. And it's really how it should be built. You should have, I mean, it's a nice neighborhood. It should have a nice road. And you don't have that now.
Okay, now
I just want to clarify one more point because you made it several times, but I just want to make sure I'm understanding because I live in this neighborhood too. All the drainage issues, so on Incognito, on Knollwood Drive, all the drainage issues will be mitigated to a great degree from this project as well.
So the surface water that Incognito might be subject to during the storms that makes its way down the gravel portion of McCarthy will no longer happen.
Mm-hmm.
The surface water that makes its way through the yards on that one section of McCarthy that I pointed out that goes behind and then down the swale to Knollwood and then out to White Birch, the water that falls in the road will no longer take that path. Everything goes underground and out to either Stormytown or Cedar Lane.
so this isn't necessarily going to control all of the drainage problems in the town, just the ones on McCarthy. So it may or may not have and some of the surrounding streets, not necessarily all, because I don't think we've studied all of Knollwood and what is happening all on Knollwood, but some of it.
If you address the swale, like you address it, so it's you know.
It seems like it would seem that some of those problems will be taken care of, but not necessarily.
Both of those instances will definitely be decreased. Okay. The order of decrease, the magnitude of the decrease is dependent on the magnitude of the storm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and now we can take questions from the public, but I think you want to you're gonna have to come up and use the microphone, whether or not you like to, because we have the cameras running, and this way it'll benefit anybody who's not here, who's watching at home, or is going to watch on YouTube.
Thank you. My name's Bob Hooley. I live at 11 McCarthy. My question is, what is the width of the proposed roadway between the curbs?
Thank you. I'm glad you mentioned that because we meant to make that part of our presentation and we did not. So thank you for bringing that up. The proposed design to fit in all our utilities with the minimum, to try to minimize any of the interface issues that I discussed earlier is 26 feet. Right now, the road ranges because it's not constant, ranges anywhere from 21 to 24 feet.
Right.
So with the 24 feet being more or less the average of what most people had in their road, we took a foot on either side. We also wanted to keep the road as straight as possible because you really don't want this going down your driveway. I'm going down your neighborhood. You want you want straight lines, right? It's going to be easier to maintain. The aesthetic is nicer when you have a straight curb and a straight road. We don't want a meandering path, right? It's going to be easy for the guys to maintain when they snowplow. That's the other component of putting in the reason for putting in the concrete curbs is so you don't get the blacktop curbs knocked into your front yard in the winter and then repaired in the spring. You want a real road, concrete, binder, top course.
Okay. Thank you.
Wow.
Hi, I'm Mitchell Yonkler at 30 McCarthy Drive. Thank you very much for the presentation. My concern is the end of the road also, but for a different reason. Not the flooding, but there is no way to turn around at the end of the road. So we have gas trucks, oil trucks backing up major trucks backing into driveways, knocking down mailboxes and posts. There is no cul-de-sac there. We need something like that. And now you're talking about leaving it open. That's concerning. We also have a home, group home there where they park in the middle of the road and cause, I think it's a dangerous situation, and I think it needs to be addressed. Thank you.
All good points. Thank you for bringing those up. We're aware of the group home. We're aware of the truck issues and the traffic. We're going to have a couple of conversations with the building owners, the property owner at the very end, because his columns right now sit in the right of way. So we're going to have to discuss what that means. We propose drainage right at the limits of the right of way to collect the stormwater that does make its way down that hill, so you don't inundate the last folks on the road, or the folks, if it makes its way over into Incognito, or the folks that back up from White Birch, if you will, through the woods in that little swale in the back. So what we propose right now is what we call a hammerhead, because this is one of the instances where we couldn't look at it as a subdivision, because you can't retroactively go and take property back from people, right? I mean, I guess you could, but that would be a disaster. So we're trying to create a hammerhead down at the end, which is essentially just a bump out. I'm going to see if I can find it real quick. And okay. So, Tom, maybe if you can zoom in over here. You see at the end of the road, it gets a little wider over here, and we go right out to the limits of the right-of-way. So we can't really go on private property to create that, but there'll be a concrete curb detail. If this is 26 over here, I'm going to guesstimate that this is about 32 to 34 feet wide. And we also have some potential to interface over here, but again, I don't really want to come here and say we're introducing truck traffic as a turnaround of what is presently a wooded area. So we're going to work with what we have as best as we can. And this is one of those conditions where we're going to say it's going to be a lot better, but it definitely is not perfect if we had our way with starting from scratch.
Are there other questions?
Yeah, I have a couple.
You just state your name and address, please.
Yes, Bob Katz, 12 Incognito, one of the people who gets flooded, which you definitely addressed. The position, have you decided yet on the positions of the catch basin towards the end of the area where the dirt road begins, presently begins?
I think more or less they're on the plan right now. I'll let James address that. The only ones that we don't have finalized are at the very end, because there's the column issue and the encroachment issue that we have to deal with the homeowner there.
You're talking about Norwood Drive, I take it.
No. Well, no, the very end of McCarthy. So the house at the end of McCarthy that backs up to Norwood.
The group home.
No, the group home's the one on the right, correct?
Correct. The one on the
The one
left is
after-
my backyard.
The one, not the left side. The one at the very end.
That's
So
Norwood.
that's quite
Yes,
a ways
no-
up.
That's Norwood.
Yeah, thank you.
Norwood, yeah.
Down here. We don't really have the final drainage structures designed down here yet.
Okay.
But keeping in mind that the majority of these all the drainage structures on here, although there's going to be some detention component just by nature of them having the diameter, by default the stormwater will be detained over here. But this is the detention design.
Can I approach your diagram for a second?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? What I'm referring to is my yard is somewhere over here. Okay? And what I'm concerned about is the flow as it comes around what's presently or will the dirt end here. Do you plan on any catch basins in this area over here to protect the drainage problem, which is a real big problem for me and my neighbor over here?
Okay, we'll point him out right now.
Yeah, I understand what you're talking about, that presently with nothing here, the road at ground elevation, it's all coming down off the hill towards your property here. What we've chosen for the placement of the catch basins is a a standard separation or a standard series of catch basins, or the separation between them is standard. And we have selected that based on the tributary area to them. So these catch basins, the system goes all the way up the hill. So any of the water starting here, any of the water coming down the road from this point is going to get into the catch basin. It's no longer on the road, starting here. These catch basins take this area. The next catch basin down this one takes this area. And so on. There's another catch basin here, another one here. And then down at the bottom, we're proposing 2. And then, Mr. Fraley mentioned before, a trench drain along the end of the roadway. So it will be a series of catch basins. We're not going to funnel it to one location. It'll be separated.
I say that in part because Incognito has just one catch basin at the very end by White Birch. So if I understand you correctly, you're planning on putting in multiple catch basins along McCarthy Drive, where it starts, as it presently slopes downward towards the dirt area. Am I correct?
Correct. And it'll be fortified by the curb, so the water won't be able to.
I understand. What about the underground waterway? What's your plans? What do you plan to do with that in terms of, which comes to the surface on the dirty area of technically McCarthy Drive? What is its flow rate? What do you plan? How do you plan to divert it?
Let me just state one thing about Incognito. We'll get to that in a second. So, I'm not sure if we cover the details once that catch basin send everything into the detention system, and because you're on Incognito there. The work on Incognito is not, there'll be no catch basins there. That'll strictly be a transmission line.
No, I understand that.
Okay.
I'm with you on that.
So as far as groundwater and what you're referring to as a waterway, if you will, or a spring, we know there's a lot of water on that hill. A lot of I think we're going to alleviate a lot of it with the sub base. It will be granular. It'll be good for drainage. It will allow the water to make its way out to the ground and recharge the ground versus coming to the surface and causing surface flooding. The road itself, when finalized, will be impervious, so there's going to be nothing coming up into the road and damaging it, or going through the road and enhancing what you're calling as the waterway. And as far as the groundwater condition,
no, that you have to live with. I understand.
That is what it is.
There is whatever that underwater thing is. Let's, for argument's sake, call it a stream. It comes down McCarthy. It appears to come, and I don't know this for a fact, through the vacant lot in some way, works its way into what is presently the dirt road at some point in front of the group home behind my house, and then rises to the surface and has created a gully about 2 feet wide and about 2 or 3 feet deep, going into 7 Incognito Lane over the many years.
Yeah.
It is close at some point to the surface. Being close to the surface at some point is going to require you, I assume, once you work that dirt area, to somehow divert it, move it, channel it. You can't just ignore it. What plans are in place regarding that? Is it going to be diverted, just channeled into somebody's yard? Is it going to be channeled into the sewer system? What is the sewer system, if it's being done into the sewer system? What is the flow rate? How will the sewer system be able to manage that flow rate? What are the plans in place so that the contractor doesn't come, find it, and take the easiest route to resolve it, which is not going to help a lot of people?
Okay. Good questions. And just again, for clarity for the public, for what Mr. Katz is asking, the last thing you said I want to address first. The sewer system he's referring to, I'm going to assume, is the storm sewer system.
Correct. That's
yeah,
what I
because
meant.
I wouldn't want folks to think that we would ever divert stormwater into a sanitary system and inundate the.
I meant the drainage system.
Yep. No. I just wanted to say that for clarification for the public, because that's easily misinterpreted sometimes when you just say sewer. But with regard to running into groundwater on a job, it won't be the first time if we do, and it probably won't be the last. But we did take borings along the 2,000 feet all the way through the end of McCarthy in various locations to see what kind of subsurface conditions we had for rocks and or the potential for groundwater or springs. Basically, a lot of what we know there is what you're conveying to us now, which is tribal knowledge and what we think happens with the groundwater and the underground springs. We really didn't get anything in the borings that would indicate that we have an issue with springs. But the stormwater system by design will draw out any potential spring or groundwater because the water is going to take its course of least resistance. And there'll be components under the ground for the pipes that connect the catch basins and what have you to receive that, particularly in the detention system.
Well, I'm
going to have to just say that I want to see if there are any other questions, Mr. Katz, and then if we are going to continue to address your particular concerns, maybe we could do that offline. I want to give other people a chance, just like we do with a public hearing.
It's fine. Just one. Do I understand that your present plan is not to cut through into incognito?
Can you repeat that?
Your present plan is not to take the easement into incognito, leave incognito a cul-de-sac.
There's a present easement. The present scope works within that present easement to run storm.
That's not, with all due respect, you're not answering my question. My question is,
I didn't understand it then.
Do you plan on connecting incognito to McCarthy?
The roadway itself?
Yes.
No. The only thing we will leave the highway department and the town the ability to do is access the subsurface stormwater.
And just to, again,
in that easement.
I understand. Just to, again, bring to the board's attention, which I've brought multiple times, from the diagram, it doesn't look like it's an issue, but if you cut into that easement, even to make a hammerhead or a turnaround, you create the issue of the potential problem of the property lines on incognito. So that should be carefully considered and addressed before any final plans are made.
Well aware and reiterating what the gentleman asked earlier, in a perfect world, we would have designed this with a minimum 60-foot radius cul-de-sac at the end. It probably would have meant there could have been maybe one or two less buildable lots at the end in today's review, but we're working with what we have. And again, it's one of those things.
I understand that, but what you potentially change multiple property lines on incognito, which is going to be a considerable expense to the homeowners if you cut into the easement. As I've expressed in my communications to the board, both at the prior meeting in February of last year, as well as my communications in writing.
Definitely not the intent as it stands today, and if it ever was to become necessary, I'm sure you'd be hearing from town council.
Are there any other questions or comments? Come on up. Just please state your name and address.
Terrence Lennon. I live at 9 White Birch Drive, and I just would like to request a hard copy of all the drawings that you've set forth here, if that's possible, before we leave here tonight.
Well, you can request it before we leave here, but I don't know that you're going to be able to get a hard copy before we leave here. So we can. Okay. That's not possible, but we can get you a hard copy.
How would I be able to avail myself of that, Dina?
Do you want to have people come?
Well, I don't.
My own review.
No, I understand. I don't know if you want to.
Can't print that out.
Well, let me say what I want to say, and then we'll go from there. If we can print it out, there's actually a couple of copies right behind you, so I'm going to trust that you don't take those when you turn around, because those are mine.
They're a little big.
But formally, he could go through the FOIL process, but I would really ask that we maintain this communication that we're having now. Again, we're always around, always available to go over anything you want to review, and these are 75% drawings. They're not final, and I get a little concerned because we do want to really answer everybody's questions and make everybody happy at the end of the day, but sometimes when incomplete drawings get circulated, it gets inappropriate information makes its way out, and sometimes it might not be explained exactly for what it is. Much more comfortable letting us take it to construction document phase, and then it becomes public record. Well, it is public. Everything we do is public record, right? But a construction document phase is exactly what is being proposed to be built and being bid.
Can I just ask one quick question of Mr. Campanella? Have you zoomed in on these drawings? So each drawing has been zoomed in, is going to be part of the YouTube presentation. You will be able to stop and pause, and if you're looking on your phone, you could probably zoom in and study and shift around. That might be one way to address it at this point. And again, I guess if we wanted to foil, or if you, the other thing that I was going to suggest is that we could have one set available for people to come and take a look at.
We could do that.
Okay. Or would you like that to be your office?
Wherever you would like.
Okay.
I would, but again, and even tonight, if you want to let me know the nature of your question tonight, we can try to start there. Just to have it. Fair enough. Then I will coordinate with the supervisor how to do just that. Yeah. Why don't you leave with the clerk or the
Yes.
so we can make it record.
Okay. Anybody else have questions? Please come on up.
10 White Birch Drive. We're incognito.
Could you just get a little closer to the microphone so we can have it on the
Where incognito is? Have you seen how many people have put in French drains because of that creek behind the houses on White Birch and across also? When I went around to get that sign, I was shocked. A lot of the people I didn't think would have French drains because of the water that kept coming, and how many that have it. Now, from my understanding, those houses are 40 to 50 years old. Am I correct? 50? Okay. There's a basin flat to the right when you pull into my driveway. You can see the size of the pipe. So you're going to divert that water, and that's going to hold it. I better not be getting any water into my house or anything, because then we're looking at a lawsuit.
Okay. So I'm not exactly sure where 10 sits because I just don't know the maps by the numbers. But
Incognito, okay, if you're coming down Cedar Lane, you come down Cedar Lane, you make a right.
Yeah.
You're on White Birch Drive.
Yep.
The first street to your right, you can only go right.
Is
That's the only-
incognito, yeah.
That's incognito.
Yeah.
My house is on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So you
So if I would have known when I bought this house, because New York had this wonderful thing, if you pay $500, you don't have to report any problems that you had. I wouldn't have bought the house. I have over $20,000 with the French drain and everything to keep water at bay. And I better not be getting water. That pipe, I can't see how you're going to connect big, because I've seen some really big pipes, and I'm looking at the one that, water's flowing into, because we have spring water. Wendy, isn't your yard? Yeah, she lost part of her yard. It's going down the behind on Cedar Lane. He hardly has any water. I mean any ground. He lost it. You had a sinkhole, didn't you, Roy? Yeah, nice sinkhole from that water. So what are you going to do? How is that going to hold all that water that's coming down? And maybe the pipes are 50 years old.
Okay. So
and the
again,
spring is coming underneath my brand new driveway.
the premise for running what we referred to a couple seconds ago when Mr. Katz was up there, the line coming down incognito is the transmission line. So there won't be any water collected and put into that line on incognito. It's the transmission of the water that is going to flow from the detention system for the storm water that is collected on McCarthy. Presently, as it stands today, a large part of that storm water makes its way to the rear yard of Mr. Katz and then down into that swale between Incognito and White Birch, right? And that's where a lot of that storm water goes now. That's what we're looking to prevent. So ideally, the surface water that is introduced into the basin, the swale behind your house, is going to be collected for a 100-year storm and diverted underground, under incognito, out to the receiving stream, the receiving structure that will discharge on Cedar Lane. So none of that water will go behind your house. But I do want to say something. And, like, here's a fun fact. I did drainage around my house myself, where I live, because I had groundwater issues during heavy rain.
Spring that's coming
Right.
through, which
Well-
I didn't know about.
Okay, groundwater issues are not something that you can deal with a surface water collection system. Like I said, we can do some things maybe in the detention system to try to draw out the groundwater in some areas when the water table is high. But if the water table's high just there, the water table high is going to be high everywhere because I know you do, and I'm sure if you did that system, you're intimate with what it takes. But water will seek its level. And that's the premise for doing those French drains, to relieve the pressure, to allow the water to come out, make its way into the drain, and as soon as it gets into the drain, you kick it out. You probably, I'm going to assume, you run it back out to the swale behind your house, right?
No, it's good. Doesn't it come to mind from mine that, the drain, that it goes into yours? Yeah, it goes underneath Incognito and she's on the other side of Incognito on White Birch.
Okay, but I'm not really, not. Okay, so again, private property systems that are put in place to protect someone's.
You have to come up if you want to speak, otherwise no one on video can hear you.
My name is Lisa Weeks. I live at 12 White Birch Drive.
Hi.
I was a youngster when I moved into the house, and a lot of the people below me on White Birch, the houses weren't even built. McCarthy Drive didn't exist. Incognito didn't exist. At one point, when they started building, the town used the easements behind our house to put in a drainage system with 2-foot diameter piping that runs from 14 White Birch, where it collects, the basin collects it. It runs underground through my yard, under 10 White Birch, and down out into Cedar Lane. For a long time, that worked. We used to have a river, and you keep saying 100-year storms. When it drizzles, it becomes a 100-year storm in my backyard. My backyard is a lake. I literally sit and watch all the water run from McCarthy down Rowies, down, I'm sorry, I always say Whiskey because of the dog that lived there, down Whiskey's yard. And I'm watching it flow through our yard. So the existing pipe that's there is no longer working. And I understand what you're doing. My question to you is, why are you stopping at McCarthy? Because it's not just McCarthy. I get a lot of it is McCarthy, but why aren't you then finishing and going back through all this damage that's happening because what's there isn't working anymore?
We talked about this when we went and visited with the highway superintendent. I know he is cognizant of the drainage issues that you're having. The scope of this project was McCarthy. It would be, I don't want to say short-sighted. It would be premature to go and design a drainage system or any improvements, or it might even be just maintenance of before you do that, because if this ends up solving, we don't know if this is going to solve the problem. You have nothing to gauge it on. If you go and create, belts and suspenders before you realize you need the suspenders, that's really not prudent. I think it would be a good idea to finish this project. It'll be a good idea for the highway superintendent to keep his eye on the system behind your house for what, and I don't know what town, I can't speak to the easements and what is and what isn't the town's responsibility. Whether it be a maintenance.
It runs all the way through. And like everybody's saying, property lines.
Yeah.
The whole yard between all of us is an easement that runs from Knollwood to Cedar Lane.
Okay.
And it's supposed to be accessible by the town at all times.
Well, let me tell you two things that this project's going to do. The water from McCarthy that made its way, it was one of the first things I referenced, to the swale that goes between those houses on Knollwood and McCarthy towards the north end. The water will no longer go into that swale from McCarthy. The water that falls from the sky into that, that's going to go. But none of the surface water that falls on the impervious road is going to make it there. It's going to go underground out into a system that will never surface in advance of its connection at White Birch down to Cedar Lane. The water that presently makes its way down to McCarthy Hill and washes out all the stone during every storm will no longer make its way behind Incognito and White Birch. So that's two major water surfaces, or two major components to flooding, that will no longer make its way down to your system. But Michael G is, again, he's cognizant of that issue. And we all agreed, first things first, and then we see.
Okay. I think what we're gonna do is ask. We can go till 9:30 on these questions. I think, which is another 15 minutes. So if you can try to limit your questions to about 3 minutes, so we can have another 5 questions or so, give or take, and then we can also just again open it up to any further written responses if you want to email us or come talk to us, and we can set up another time for follow-up meeting.
Hi, my name is Sue Demick. I live at 16 McCarthy Drive. My questions are quick, I think. First one is it your intention to sit down with each of the property owners to go through their lot and tell us kind of how things are going to work out? So is there like a one-on-one meeting we're going to be having with you or your staff? And then my second question is, how will we be compensated for the kind of the work that needs to get done? So like my driveway happens to be all pavered. I have lots of really nice landscaping with bedding, and that's all going to have to move back. So, you know, who's going to pay for kind of all the landscaping design and the pavers that now, you know, I really don't want blacktop. And then my last question is like, who pays for the $2 million? Is that a capital project, or where does that money come from? Because is it already in the budget? Those are my 3 questions. I hope they're quick.
So the last one first. Yeah, if I misspeak, direct me. I'll ask Budget Officer Maddie over there to correct me. I believe it's going to be bonded, and it's in this year's capital budget for the town.
Yep.
And the bond amount will be finalized after they write the resolution after the bid. And yeah, to reiterate what Mr. Teese just reminded me, the water component will be a separate bid item in the contract documents, and that's already in the village's 2019 budget. We've already bonded for that. So we're anticipating that cost out of the water fund in the village. Your second question was who's going to pay for any interface issues with the right-of-way. There'll be no personal costs. There will be no residential cost in this project. We're still identifying the instances. The reason we squeezed it down to 26 foot versus what town and village code call for just out of hand should be a 30-foot road. We don't feel we need to do that here. We're making a pretty bad condition a lot better, but maybe not, you know, putting the onus of what it would do to the homeowners. So there'll be no cost implications there. And the 26 foot wasn't just an arbitrary number. We really did walk the road multiple times. I know your yard. It is beautiful.
But is it going to be aesthetically the same, or is that are we going to have that conversation around what aesthetically it's going to look like?
Yes, I'm going to say that it's going to be case by case.
Yeah.
And I think that we're going to be reasonable.
Yeah, because
right?
you know, if it's like a curb and half of my bedding is gone, it's going to look stupid, right?
Again.
So we have to like work on it together, which I
Again,
hope could be
yeah,
reasonable.
absolutely.
We'll sit down and go through it.
So that is a good
Very
segue.
picky,
That's
yes.
a good segue.
Yeah.
It's a good segue into your first question.
Yeah.
There's going to be 2 separate things we're going to do at the end. And again, Michael G's on board, Supervisor's on board, and we're on board. Once we get to the construction document phase, pre-bid, before we go out to bid, we're going to have the individual meetings where we need to have them, which is pretty much every homeowner, because everybody's going to be impacted. But we're also going to have meetings like this. Probably outside of a legislative session, we're probably going to have a specific meeting just for you all. It might be at the site. It might be one-on-one. But again, only because this isn't really the norm, we're not going to, the summary is we're not going to go out to bid until we have every issue resolved and the residents are satisfied.
All right, I want to give someone else a chance.
My name's Dan Fortini. I live at 3 Incognito.
Just logistically, what do you guys plan to do with regard to the detention tank as far as its construction? What is the schedule on that, and how will it impact Incognito? I know there's going to be a huge overhaul at McCarthy. They should expect, the world to end essentially on that road for a while. But is that going to impact us, and how long?
So your world won't end, and you won't. You might have intermittent interruptions to property access when we're doing like the concrete curbs where we don't want you driving over those. But you're going to be able to park at the very least near your residence during construction. It's going to be done primarily in the summer and the fall, so there won't be real snow plowing issues that we're going to have to concern ourselves with. There might be some leaf collection issues, but obviously Michael G is in tune. I know you're on Incognito. I'll get there. So, I didn't just want you to scare the McCarthy folks. So Incognito basically is going to be in a single trench coming out of that detention system. Again, we're not putting spurs for catch basins. So your interruption will be that work. But again, you will have access to your parcel at all times. Okay. The detention system is, I can't speak to a contractor's means and methods or how he's going to schedule it. But I could tell you the general schedule is the majority of this work is going to take place towards the end of the spring and all of the summer into the fall.
Okay, and with regard to where trucks are going to be coming in, are you expecting to be coming on McCarthy, or are you going to hit it on both sides, or how's it going to work?
We're going to probably put restrictions on that you can put restrictions on, and where we can without escalating the cost because we're being too onerous on restrictions, we're going to limit the construction access in and out through Stormy Town. Because we really don't want to go into the more residential dead-end neighborhoods where we don't have to with the truck traffic and what have
you. Marco Gonsalves, 19 McCarthy Drive. Thank you for putting this all together. Paul, last year, February 6th, you went on record saying that you guys had a meeting out there, both you and the highway superintendent. You both looked at the road and you saw no need for curbs or widening the road because there were several utilities, large trees, 20-inch diameter, and you really, again, saw no need in needing to widen the road. And now we're going, you stated also at that point that it was around 20 feet, and you were correct at then because it's between 20 and 22 feet. And right now we're going to 26 feet. So now you're talking about roughly a 35% increase, not just in the road width, but in costs, because when it comes to road paving, it's all square footage. Personally, I think you're doing a great job with the drainage. The only place I think you need curbs, being a contractor myself and doing lots of drainage work, is at the end of McCarthy in order to corral all that water. But the rest of the way, I think you can easily just do a lowering of the road and a crowning and putting the catch basins just without needing curb stops for it. Just as you have all throughout 98% of the roads throughout the town of Boston. Stormy Town, Cedar Lane, even Knollwood, there's no curbs. And that's my viewpoint.
Okay. I remember walking the road. I don't remember specifically saying there's absolutely no need for.
It was on video. I watched it before you came.
Okay, well.
I'm not trying to be difficult on you.
I get it.
I was on board with you then, and I'm not now.
Thank you for your support. And whether I'm clarifying or contradicting what I said back in February, my recollection was where we don't need to, we're not going to widen the road. After looking at the utility necessity of a new water main, the stormwater measures that need to go in place, the 10 state standards that Mr. Teese referenced for separation from the sanitary lines, 26 foot was the minimum that we had to incorporate the components of this road. The concrete curb component is, you're right, that's something that if the highway superintendent came and said, we don't want concrete curbs on this road at all. We don't want any curbs on this road. I would not recommend it as acting as a town's engineer because curbs provide a certain component to a road that allows for better stormwater collection. It prevents people from parking on lawns. It's easier to maintain your front yard and your lawn as it interfaces with the road, so you don't have any sloughing off of mud or grass or what have you. and particularly during the winter season when they plow, if you want a really properly plowed road and they want to plow to the curb, they're plowing to a curb versus plowing to a Belgian block or a shrub or grass. Well, again, this is, you know, the charge was to design best practice.
No,
And
I'll
then,
agree
and
with you that curbs do help you contain water better throughout the whole. But when you put curbs, then you need a wider road because now you need. I'm sorry, you're limited to, you know, you can't have someone park on a corner with a curb on a 20-foot road and be able to get a fire truck around it. So I understand that when you put curbs, it makes it wider, and making it wider really kind of influences speeding. Now that the road is going to be nicer, straighter, smoother, and the biggest issue is the group home at the end of the road with the vans that come and go basically hourly. They will do 40, 50 miles an hour down that dead end road.
I certainly
And I
remember
know
that
that's
conversation.
not your issue.
No, but I do remember that.
widening
I do remember that conversation. And I remember,
widening it does invite more of that, and that's a big concern of mine.
I think it's everyone's concern, whether you have children or pets or what have you, or just your own well-being. And this road, just like any other new road that we pave in the village or the town, police are aware. New pavement usually means people get a little comfortable, and that's something that we can bring to their attention again. And as it happens, I would certainly think that the supervisor would interface with the village police chief and bring his attention to it if we think that it's really something that needs to be addressed.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I thought I had one more.
Just if
So we're
there-
lowering the road, right?
We're lowering the road to facilitate the subbase and the grade to bring it back up to the 6-inch reveal that Mr. Nattarelli referenced. And
So the existing, is it safe to say the existing top of the curb is the existing surface of the road?
yes,
Plus, and then as you mentioned, the road current road meanders throughout there, so it'll be straighter. So when you say some people are going to just lose a foot on either side, and it's probably closer to 2 foot on a side, it's also true that some people may lose 4 to 6 feet when the road curves in and out.
no, I think the only place where we have more than like a 1 or 1.5 foot reclaiming, I won't call it encroachment because you guys are the ones that are encroaching. So more of the reclaiming. I think the only place where we go outside of like the 1 or 1.5 foot change is at that vacant lot at the end at the turn. I think we needed to make that curb a little wider on, you know, the lot on the right.
The last one.
Before the group, right. And I think we're still in the right of way.
No,
And and I think that's the only spot. And then again at the end where we're doing the hammerhead for the
When we have those one-on-one meetings, or as you see they're needed, will staking or surveying of the property or the right-of-way or the new proposed curbing be done prior to those meetings?
it's a good idea. I really didn't think it out that far, but we're certainly going to make it as clear as possible for, you know, each individual homeowner and what they're going to go through.
Yeah.
So
That
yeah,
if we could have
by all
that
means.
surveying done before that meeting, that
Yeah.
way you can literally point to the stake and say, this is where you're gonna.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hey, how about one more, and then we can take the rest to written comments and statements.
Hi, I'm Catherine Manarino, 24 McCarthy Drive. I have one question, as Marco already covered a bunch of mine. What will this do to property taxes on McCarthy Drive?
This is a town, again, if I misspeak, correct me. Townwide bond. So the debt service for this project is going to be distributed to all.
Is that, I don't think
No,
that's
not
what
my-
you're asking.
yeah,
You're
my
asking
exact
how it's going to
question is,
affect
how it's going to
values.
affect the individual property values on McCarthy Drive in regard to how we will then, like,
I'm
how will
sorry.
it be assessed once once you've done what you've done to the property?
I don't want to speak for the assessor, but I don't believe the assessor can increase your assessed value based on a public improvement in the right of way. But I would maybe
You can find that out.
turn to the supervisor and find that out, and they'll get back to you.
All right. I think we had almost by a show of hands, is there anybody who did not get to ask a question or make a statement that was hot to do so, anxious to do so? I wasn't actually calling you up. I just wanted to know if anybody else had, but come on up if you're, okay, excuse me. Let me just find out again. Are there any other people in the audience who are planning or had planned to make a statement or ask a question that have not had a chance to do so? And if so, please raise your hands. Okay, we will take those last two people, and then we are going to be done. If you changed your mind, then you can talk to us after the meeting or, you know, the coming days, weeks, months. Go ahead.
I'm
Please.
Bob Casey. I'm at 17 McCarthy Drive. I'm just curious. You're saying that the road's going to be 26 feet wide. When you're doing 26 feet worth of construction, how wide is it going to be when you're doing the construction? It's going to be over 26 feet. It might be 28, 30.
No, it's a good point. I guess the estimate's going to be based on the excavation that you need to do for the concrete curb itself. Typically, you got to go about a foot behind that to get the appropriate form work in to get an 18-inch depth concrete curb. So you probably have to dig about a foot behind it. But at the end of the day, the restoration is going to come back. So, you know, whatever we're working around, whether it be a pillar or Belgian block, will be restored in kind if that's what the homeowner and the town have come to the, you know, agreement with, to the concrete curb or to the dropped concrete curb, which will be the interface with the road and everybody's apron.
So basically, on the 26 foot, you might more or less
Have a foot on either side, yeah.
no, but also come in. You're only going to come in a foot when you're constructing it. That's it. So it's going to be about 28 feet.
28
I'm talking about construction area.
Okay, so there's going to be about 28 feet of disturbance.
Right. That's
And the end is going to be a 26-foot wide road curb,
Okay, so it's only a
face
foot.
of curb to face of curb. Now the width of the concrete curb is 6 inches, so you'll really have 6 plus 6. So it's really 27 feet
Right.
of if you consider back of the curb.
Looking
width.
at 29 feet with construction, probably. Okay. Good enough.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's about.
Anthony Bose.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut it, but I do want to build on. It's another good point that I didn't say in the presentation. This is a public works project. It's publicly bid, and nothing gets awarded and let until insurances and workman's comp and bonding is collected from the contractor, just like any other public works project that the town bids. So if there is an interface with the homeowners are there's insurance coverage and for liability and anything that happens during the construction project, which I know is should be another concern of yours as they interface with your private parcel. So work that happens outside the right of way, if there ever has to be an encroachment on your parcel to do anything, there'll be the appropriate coverages in place for that. And rest assured, the appropriate notification before we do anything without you guys knowing about your individual parcels.
Anthony Bosey, 18 McCarthy Drive. Just two quick questions. I'd heard from somebody at some point that you're proposing streetlights. Is that something that's true in this project?
That's not presently in
Not
the scope,
presently?
no.
And one other thing too, with regards to the gas that I heard that they were proposing. I mean, just out of curiosity, how many people do they need to do that kind of work? Because anybody I've talked to on the block has said, yeah, we said yes to that. So just curious, do they need 100% participation for that, something like that to be put forward?
Well, I think it was a question that came up earlier, so I'll just reiterate what the
Yeah, that's why I
supervisor
just want
said.
to know what the parameters are for them to say, yes, we'll do that.
I don't want to speak for what Michael G did with regard to his parameters by polling you guys, but what the supervisor stated was that there didn't seem to be the interest. So I'm sure we'll look into that a little further and restate it. And it's something that we'll definitely try to put to bed in advance of commencement of work, because we do not want to do that after the fact.
I can't find my information right now, but it had been communicated to me that it wasn't enough for Con Ed to have said that this was significant for them to be worth their while to put in the line. And again, I don't know that if that was coming off of their knowing that they had this moratorium, because we obviously had approached them before. I don't know the answer, and I can try to get the answer to that from Mr. O'Connor. Okay. Thanks, everybody. And again, if you have further questions, please you can feel free to send them to me or to tc@townofaustining.com, which goes to the entire town board, and then I always forward everything to Paul and to Michael G. And we are now going to take a short break before we get back to our regular meeting for a bathroom break. But we do have more of our meeting, so we're not done yet. Hi, Mr. Sullivan. Items only.
Is there
If
anyone
anybody has
here
any
to-
comments?
to address the board?
Seeing nobody, if we're going to now go into our board resolutions.
Sure. Letter A, approval of minutes, special meeting February 15th, 2019. Resolved that the town board of the town of Ossining hereby approves the February 15th, 2019 minutes of the special meeting as presented.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? I'm sorry.
Councilwoman Feldman was not present for that meeting.
Oh, let's go
I was
back
just
to that.
looking at that like.
And did you say, I didn't hear what you voted anyway. Did you
That was the
abstain?
special morning meeting because of the weather.
Yeah, that's the one I was looking at, trying to figure out if that was a morning one. All right, then abstain.
Okay, thank you.
Got it.
And now,
So it's a 19th. That was-
okay.
Got it.
Okay.
Letter B, approval of minutes, special meeting February 19th, 2019. Resolved that the town board of the town of Ossining hereby approves the February 19th, 2019 minutes of the special meeting as presented.
Do you have a motion?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay. Letter C, approval of the voucher detail report. Resolved that the town board of the town of Ossining hereby approves the voucher detail report dated February 26, 2019 in the amount of $17,197 for 2018 and $116,562.77 for 2019 for a total of $133,759.77.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Letter D, Town of Ossining budget modifications, year-end 12/31/2019. Resolved that the 2018 year-end budget is modified as described below.
Okay. Go ahead. Did you want to say something, Maddie?
Sure. The title of that resolution should instead read Town of Ossining Budget Modifications Year-End 12/31/2018.
Okay. And are we going to go through each and every one of those? No. Okay. So do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, so our finance office is already working hard to prepare for the 2018 town audit, which will take place during the first week of April. While we still have a few 2018 bills trickling in, we are almost ready to close out the year. And these budget adjustments will help bring us even closer. Are there any questions or discussions about any of these budget adjustments? Is there anything you wanted to say, our budget director, Ms. Zahach, before we move on? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Letter E, approval of the 2019 cabaret license, Maya Riviera Bar and Restaurant, 518 North State Road, Briarcliff Manor. Whereas Maya Riviera Bar and Restaurant, the applicant has filed an application for a cabaret license for the calendar year 2019, and whereas in 2018, the applicant requested extended hours during which it could play amplified music from 12 midnight to 1 a.m. on Fridays and Saturdays, which request the town board granted on a 3-month provisional basis and then for the remainder of the 2018 calendar year. And whereas the town board is authorized under Chapter 68 of the Town Code, Section 68-20B, to extend hours, a cabaret may play music beyond what is permitted in the code where it deems it appropriate and consistent with the public safety and welfare. And whereas the town board has reviewed the 2019 application and attachments thereto and has solicited input from involved departments, including the police department and building department, and whereas on February 19th, 2019, the town board opened a duly noticed public hearing on the subject cabaret application, at which time no members of the public appeared to speak on the application, and the public hearing was closed on February 19th, 2019. And therefore be it resolved that the town board of the town of Ossining hereby approves the application for the Maya Riviera Restaurant and Bar and Restaurant, 518 North State Road, Briarcliff Manor, in the unincorporated area of the town of Ossining for a cabaret license for 2019 calendar year, subject to the following limitations and conditions. 1, the music played on site will consist only of mariachi band consisting of 3 to 5 members using guitars and trumpets, or B, a DJ using karaoke machine. Number 2, amplified music shall be allowed on Sunday through Thursday from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. and Friday and Saturday from 11 a.m. to 1 a.m. Be it further resolved that the town board finds that based upon the lack of complaints from the public or the town's departments and positive role the applicant's establishment plays in the community, that is appropriate and consistent with the public safety and welfare to allow the applicant to play amplified until 1 a.m. on Friday and Saturday nights, but reserve the right to revisit this determination in subsequent years and make any modifications to the hours during which amplified music is permitted that the town board deems necessary based upon circumstances presented at that time. And be it further resolved, the conditions on this cabaret license are only for the 2019 calendar year, and the town board reserve the right to modify and/or eliminate any and all conditions when considering the applicant's application for a cabaret license renewal for 2020 calendar year in accordance with Chapter 68 of the Town Code.
Do I have a motion?
Second.
Okay, so we had a public hearing for Maya Riviera, and we had no public input, and we are very happy to support this business with this cabaret license. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Letter F, Resolution, Ossining Boat and Canoe Club Improvements 2019. Resolved that the town board hereby authorizes the Ossining Boat and Canoe Club to undertake certain electrical work on the property as set forth in the proposal from Lighten Up Electric, Inc., dated October 10, 2018, which work will not be attributed to the annual maintenance, repair, or capital improvements required pursuant to the license agreement between the town and OBCC.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Letter G, Contract Matrix Imaging Solutions, LLC. Resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Ossining hereby authorizes the supervisor to enter into an agreement with Matrix Imaging Solutions, LLC, 6341 Inducan Drive East, Sanborn, New York, to serve as the fulfillment center for the Town of Ossining tax bills, inclusive of formatting, printing, and mailing, effective March 1st, 2019.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So at the recommendation of the receiver of taxes, the town will be moving to a new fulfillment center for our tax bills in 2019. I know Holly Perlowitz, our receiver, has been working very hard to find a company that will fill our needs at the best possible value, and we are excited to begin our work with Matrix on the upcoming town-county bill, the rates for which we will begin to prepare next week. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Letter H, Contract Group Life Insurance with First Reliance Standard Life Insurance Company. Resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Ossining hereby authorizes the supervisor to enter into an agreement with First Reliance Standard Life Insurance Company, 590 Madison Avenue, 29th floor, New York, New York, for the provision of life insurance coverage for active full-time elected and appointed employees of the town, effective October 1st, 2018.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I'm excited to present this resolution to the board, and thank you very much to our budget director, Madeline Zahach, who works on all of our insurance needs, to change life insurance companies, which has allowed us to decrease our monthly insurance premiums by more than half. It took us some time to get sign-off from our experts on the contract itself, but the savings that we will realize are well worth it. Any questions, discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Letter I, authorizing levy of unpaid water charges on town tax roll. Whereas pursuant to an intermunicipal agreement, Water IMA, dated January 1st, 2002, the Village of Ossining supplies water to the unincorporated area of the town of Ossining, town outside, and directly bills consumers in the town outside for water supplied pursuant to the Water IMA. And whereas pursuant to the Water IMA, any water charges that is delinquent for 3 or more months shall be levied against the delinquent property by the town and shall be subject to penalty in the manner provided by law, in which event upon collection of the town shall remit the amount collected to the Village of Ossing. And whereas pursuant to Section 198 of the town law, the town of Ossing is authorized to levy unpaid water charges against delinquent properties. Now therefore be it resolved that any water charges to a customer outside of the Village of Ossing corporate limits and in the town of Ossing that is delinquent for 3 or more months shall be levied against the delinquent property and shall be subject to penalty in the manner provided by law. And be it further resolved that the village treasurer, on behalf of the village clerk of the Village of Ossing, shall file with the supervisor of the town of Ossing, as required by law, statements showing unpaid water charges to customers outside of the Village of Ossing corporate limits, but within the town of Ossing, which are delinquent for 3 or more months, and that such statements shall contain a brief description of the property upon which the water was used, the names of the persons or corporations liable to pay for the same, and the amounts chargeable to each for the purposes of levy enforcement under water rents. And upon receipt of such statement, the supervisor will transmit said statement of delinquent water charges to the receiver of taxes for levy against those delinquent properties.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So last week, the board received a memo from our town comptroller, Tom Warren, detailing this annual process, as well as giving us a list of delinquent parcels and balances due. These will be added to the aforementioned town-county bill for those customers in the unincorporated town who have not paid their village water bills timely. Tom was willing to join us tonight to answer any questions from the board, but seeing as today is his birthday, we decided to let him play hooky, just this once. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Happy birthday, Tom.
Letter J, Sewers approval of Ossing Consolidated Sewer District Extension, John T. Curvan and Caroline Curvan, 111 Hawks Avenue. Whereas a petition for the extension of the Ossing Consolidated Sewer District located at 111 Hawks Avenue of the Town of Ossing, Westchester County, New York, dated January 8, 2019, has been presented to the Town Board by John T. Curvan and Caroline Ranald Curvan, and whereas an order was duly adopted by the Town Board on January 22, 2019, reciting the filing of said petitions and specifying February 12, 2019 at 7:35 p.m. in the Police Court Facility, 8688 Spring Street, Ossing, New York, at the date, time, and place where the said board would hold a public hearing to consider the petition and to hear all person interested in the subject matter, therefore concerning the same. And whereas such order was duly posted and published as required by law, and whereas a public hearing on the matter was duly held by the Town Board on February 19, 2019, as the meeting of February 12, 2019 was canceled due to weather conditions where discussions of the matter was had and all persons interested were given the opportunity to be heard. And whereas pursuant to Section 194(6) of the town law, the approval of the state controller is not required, since the entire burden of the financing of the proposed extension is to be borne by the petitioner, and there is to be no financing borne by the town of Ossing, the Ossing Consolidated Sewer District, or any prior extensions thereof. Now therefore be it resolved, A, that the petition is signed and acknowledged as required by law. B, that all property and property owners within the proposed extension are benefited thereby. C, that all the property and property owners benefited by thereby are included, and D, that it is in the public interest to grant the relief sought, and it is further resolved that the extension of the Ossing Consolidated Sewer District in the town of Ossing, Westchester County, New York, is proposed in the petition. And B, the same is hereby approved, and that the said sewer district extension include the property and described in the said petition, and it is further resolved that the town clerk shall, within 10 days after the adoption of this resolution, file certified copies thereof in duplicate in the office of the State Department of Audit and Control at Albany, New York, and record a certified copy in the office of the clerk of the County of Westchester.
Do I have a motion?
Moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Finance, Capital Project 2015-2193, 2015 Street Paving Project 2193. Resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Ossing hereby adjusts and closes capital project 2015-2193 entitled 2015 Street Paving Project 2193 from $448,430 to $458,221.31 in accordance with revenues received and transferred balance of $9,990.27 to the 2018 paving project. The 2015 street paving project was funded by CHIPS and highway funds with a transfer from TOV contingency and highway fund balance.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So based on the recommendations from our finance team, we are closing this capital project and will be using the unspent funds to offset a slight overage on the Hawks Avenue paving job from last year. Thank you as always to our town comptroller. Oh, sorry. Okay, so just for a point of clarification, it's 448,430, not 458,000. Is that what you, correction there? Okay. So again, thanks again to our comptroller and deputy comptroller for staying on top of our capital projects, to our town engineer, our highway superintendent and his team for working with our contractors to get excellent results on these projects while keeping the pricing reasonable. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Finance Capital Project 2018-5211, reclamation and paving Fox Avenue. Resolve that the Town Board of Town of Ossining adjusts and closes the 2018 Capital Project 2018-5211 entitled Reclamation and Paving Hawks Avenue with the original project budget of $135,000 increased to $174,446.02 for milling, prep work, cutting joints, shimming around driveways, catch basins, and paving. The project is to be funded from CHIPS, EWR Pave New York funds, capital residual balance transfer, and highway fund balance.
Do I have a motion?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Can we just go back for one quick second to K, and just for point of clarification on the wording of the resolution, which is different than the original unadjusted budget details below, where it itemizes the decrease from original to adjusted as 448,430 to 448,231, but in the resolution it says 458. Is that, it just seems like the math, something is not correct in the math, and I can't quite identify. From, see in the body of the resolution versus the math.
And we can check it, but I'm not going to be able to do that right now.
Okay, do we need to, so we're going to
You can retroactively table it.
retroactively table the resolution unless we, for some reason, need it to happen. Can we have that happen next week?
You can hold a special meeting. I mean, I'm
I'm asking Maddie if she knows.
It can certainly happen next week. I'm not sure that it's incorrect.
Okay. Right, so, right, I mean, only that, I'm trying to figure out what, if the math,
I don't know what it is either, but it's something
791.
missing.
Okay, well, I mean, I don't want to take too much time, so let's just table it in
Okay.
that case.
Okay. So retroactively table resolution K. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Culture, for catching what may or may not be that we need to adjust. Okay, so we are up to
Letter M.
Letter M.
Agreement with T-Town Lake Reservation and Saratoga Cornell Cooperative Extension. Resolved that Town Board of Town of Ossining does hereby agree to participate in the voluntary boat steward program through Teton Lake Reservations Watercraft Inspection Steward Program for the Lower Hudson Partnership and Regional Invasive Species Management, PRISM, in partnership with Capital Mohawk PRISM, hosted by the Saratoga Cornell Cooperative Extension, in order to protect the Hudson River from invasive species, and be it further resolved that town supervisor is authorized to sign any necessary paperwork to initiate the program for the boat launch and beach at Lewis Engle Park, subject to approval by council of the town.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
A little bit. I didn't see any of them last year.
That's because they skipped last year.
Okay.
That,
It makes a lot-
but there's
'cause-
now, not only is there a grant, but there's a requirement by the DEC that that river towns participate in this program. And this Saratoga Cornell Cooperative won the grant, and T-Town is going to be working with them and the grant money from the state, basically to address the communities that have been identified, and we are one of them. So we will be seeing them, and there are specific hours that are as part of the agreement that are that they will be there, and they're also most likely will schedule a presentation from them so that we can have it also on camera and available to the public about what you need to do to be able to keep invasive species from moving from one water body to another by cleaning off the bottom of your boat. So I anticipate we'll be bringing that forth as we get a little bit closer to boating season, which is going to be imminent. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Supervisor, going back to the resolution, the math is correct.
The math
So I don't
is
know if you
correct?
want to untable it.
I would love to
But the
untable it.
math is
Okay, do you want to
correct.
just explain it to us so that we know why we thought
Sure.
it was wrong?
So if you look at the difference between the two numbers in the street paving project 2193 line, as compared with the difference on the CHIPS funding line, so you see how on the CHIPS funding line, there's a difference of 9,791.31 cents. On the top, there's a difference of 198.96. If you add those two numbers together, you get the 999027.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Perfection. Okay, so let's go back and once again untable, if that's such a word, letter K, which is the capital project, a street paving project from 2015, to move the leftover money from that to the 2018 capital project. Do I have a motion to for that resolution?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Okay. Letter N, Urban Forestry Grant Contract Approval. Resolve the Town Board of the Town of Ossining authorizes the town supervisor to enter into an agreement with New York State Department of Environmental Conservation for a grant to the town in the amount of $50,000 to complete Phase 2 of a tree inventory in the town of Ossining, subject to approval by town council as to form.
Do I have a motion?
Move.
Second.
So you may remember that last year we began the process of inventorying the street trees in the town of Ossining, beginning with some of our main thoroughfares and commercial areas, namely North State Road, New York State Route 133, and New York State Route 134, and also Lewis Engle Park, which was funded by a grant from the New York State DEC Urban and Community Forestry Program. We recently received a second grant from the same program in the amount of $50,000 to complete Phase 2 of this inventory, to include the remaining roadways in the unincorporated area and all town parks. The next step will be to issue a request for proposals to obtain quotes from vendors to complete the inventory with the grant funds we have received. This project will provide us with some more information about the benefits of that our street trees provide to the environment, and will help inform future strategies to maintain a healthy community forest here in Ossining. Once again, I thank Victoria Caffarelli, my office, for helping us obtain this grant. Did I take a motion? I already had a motion in a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have visitor recognition. Our masses have departed, so there seems to be nobody left. So thank you to everyone for sticking with us through this somewhat lengthy agenda. As a reminder, we will be at the Ossining Public Library next Tuesday, March 5th, for the town hall meeting on the homestead study from the Benjamin Center. We did have a presentation of that at our work session last week, and we will have another short discussion to bring those in the room up to speed, and then we will open it up for public comment. The meeting is scheduled to start at 7:30 p.m. in anticipation of knowing that there might be some tough parking. Please remember that you can park at our town hall at 16 Croton Avenue, at the community center. I've reached out to the school superintendent to see if we could also have people park at Ossining High School, which he has said is okay to do. And please do consider carpooling. And I think with that, I'll take a motion to go into executive session for personnel and advice of counsel.
Second.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great week. And we hear that there might be a little snow coming, so please be careful out there and remember all the rules and regulations that we always remind you of. Bye-bye.